This conference will now be recorded.
We will be starting in approximately 4 to 5 minutes. We will begin no later than 10:05. I do want to give a couple more people time to either show up in person or to log on, but we will start no later than 10:05. Good with everybody? Good. Okay, mute me again, please. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, it's 10:04, and if anybody would like to grab a cup of coffee or do anything, right now is the time to do it, because as soon as the clock hits 10:05, I will be calling the meeting to order. It's 10:05, so if you wanted your coffee, it's too late. Good morning, everybody. I presume the volume is okay. Can you all hear me? Please nod if you can. Okay. You can hear me? Yes? Nod? Okay. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the December 6th meeting of the South Florida Regional Planning Council Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy meeting. We are the EDS committee for South Florida of the United States Department of Commerce. And one of the groups, and we'll hear a presentation on that momentarily. I have been, like all of us, involved in many high-level groups, but I doubt I have been involved with one quite as high level as this group is. And I will now ask Alicia Lopez to call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Steve Abrams, Executive Director, SFRTA. Mr. Rick Beasley, Executive Director, CareerSource South Florida.
Present.
Ms. Gretchen Beesing, CEO, Catalyst Miami.
I want to remind everybody.
The Honorable Joseph Corradino, President, Miami-Dade League of Cities, Mayor, Village of Pinecrest.
And by the way, if you are on mute, when you say present, we can't hear you. So please unmute yourself to let us know that you are in fact present.
And then Mr. Nelson Fernandez, Executive Vice President, ANF Group, Inc.
Present.
Mr. Michael Finney, President and CEO of the Beacon Council.
Yeah, I'm present.
Ms. Lynn Goldman, Community Relations Coordinator, Broward Technical Colleges.
I'm present, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver Gross, President, New Urban Development. Dr. Jonathan Guerrera, PhD, President, College of the Florida Keys.
Good morning.
Morning. Mr. Gregory Hale, President, Broward College.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. George Hanbury, President and CEO, Nova Southeastern University. Ms. Carol Hilton, President, CEO of CareerSource Broward.
This is Michael Bateman. I'm representing Carol Hilton for CareerSource Broward.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. Dr. Anna Moran, District Resiliency Officer, South Florida Water Management District. Dr. Pablo Ortiz, Vice President and Vice Provost, Biscayne Bay Campus, FIU.
Running late.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He's running late.
Okay.
He's running late, yes.
Okay. Ms. Madeline Pudmariega, President, Miami-Dade College.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel Reynolds, President, Broward County AFL/CIO. Mr. Matthew Rocco, President, South Florida Manufacturing Association. Ms. Juliet Wolak, Chair, Broward Workshop, and the Director of External Affairs at FPL.
Present.
Mr. Daniel Samus, CEO, Greater Marathon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Newton Sannon, President and CEO, OIC South Florida.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Jared Smith, Chair, South Florida Hospital Association, the Chairman and CEO of Broward Health Coral Springs. Good morning. Mr. Bob Swindell, President and CEO, Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance.
Good morning, and I'm in transit. I should be joining you personally in a moment.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Swindell. Mr. TJ Villamel, International Trade and Business Development, Enterprise Florida. Mr. Randall Vitale, President, Hoffman's Chocolates. Dr. John Wensby.
Good morning, Randall's here. Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Vitale. And then Dr. John Wensby, Chief Innovation Officer, Nova Southeastern University, Executive Director of Allen B. Levin, NSU Broward Center of Innovation. I know that NSU has.
I was about to say, right,
Yeah.
Dr. Hanbury, Alan Levan, and Mr. Westhaven.
I call him Westveen, and
Westveen.
he hasn't corrected me yet.
Are all excused. Nova University is having a Board of Trustees meeting this morning, and all three of them are at that meeting.
I have two more, Senator Gill.
Please, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Okay. The Honorable Beverly Williams, Vice Mayor, City of Lauderdale Lakes, President of Broward League of Cities.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning, President.
Thank you for being here. And then, of course, the Honorable Steve Geller, which is our chair.
I believe I'm here. I hopefully am all here. I know
Senator?
I saw Steve Abrams show up.
I did see him. show
Okay,
up.
I see there's 25 people there. I'm not necessarily sure that I heard 25 people respond affirmatively. So is there anybody that has shown up that has not responded or that came in late?
Oliver Gross, New Urban Development.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We already have Mayor Abrams. Anyone else? No, okey dokey. At this point in time, and I'm not sure how we're going to do a self-introduction brief of all of the committee members. I can tell you to do it in the order that you're in the screen. That certainly won't work. Why don't we, can you call the names of the people present and then ask them to take just 30 seconds or a minute to tell us what group you represent?
I'll start in alphabetical order. Mr. Steve Abrams?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Good. Well, Stephen Abrams, Executive Director, South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, which is best known for operating Tri-Rail. And of course, we operate our commuter rail over the 72 miles from Miami International Airport all the way up through Broward County up to West Palm Beach. Broward County, of course, being the only county of the three counties where we have border-to-border service. So we're very interested in the topic of this ongoing exercise.
thank you, Steve. Next.
We're going to go with Mr. Nelson Fernandez.
Okay, good morning. Nelson Fernandez, Executive Vice President of A&F Group. We are a Broward-based general contractor and real estate developer. We've been in Broward County for 40 years, specializing in all commercial construction from healthcare to multifamily, and I am a principal with the firm.
Ms. Lynn Goldman?
Good morning, Lynn Goldman with the Broward Technical Colleges, more commonly known as Atlantic, McFadder, and Sheridan. We're a division of Broward County Public Schools. We've been in business for 53 years. We just recently, last week, were told that we were, for the 6th year in a row, the #1 educational institution in the state awarding industry certifications. We're all about getting people trained for essential skills and careers. Nice to be here.
By the way, Fernandez neglected to mention he's a former recent chair of the Broward Alliance.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Mr. Oliver Gross?
Mr. Gross? If you're speaking, you're muted. Oliver Gross?
Is here.
Oliver Gross, President of New Urban Development. All right, you had your chance.
Mr. Gregory Hale?
Greg Hale, I serve as the president of Broward College.
President Hale?
Yes, Greg Hale, president of Broward College.
We can barely hear you, sir.
How's my sound now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Just introducing myself as the president of Broward College. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And then Mr. Bateman? Ms. Carol Hilton?
Hi, good morning. I'm the Vice President of Quality Assurance for CareerSource Broward. CareerSource Broward is the administrative entity for the local workforce board here in Broward. We've been in business about 40 years. We have 3 career centers strategically located throughout Broward County that help people of all walks of life in Broward with job placement assistance, work-based learning and training opportunities, and free scholarships for upskill training and help individuals with interview and resume assistance, and as well as employers for candidate screening and hiring events and posting of job orders using our state database, Employ Florida.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Madeline Pumariega.
Good morning, everyone. Madeline here from Miami-Dade College. We're proud to be a collaborative partner with everyone as we really fuel the talent for this region. Just recently, as mentioned by one of the Broward leaders, we should all be proud that between the Broward schools and colleges and Miami-Dade colleges and schools, we really lead the state in the number of industry certifications that we're producing, along with innovative partnerships, especially in the tech space, where we just had a couple of thousand people come onto the campus this week to align and link with tech companies hiring in the region. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Juliet Rowlack.
Good morning. Juliet Rowlack, Chair of the Broward Workshop. Thank you.
Mr. Newton Sannon. Mr. Sannon?
Newton, we can't hear you. Sound remarkably like static.
Next will be Mr. Jared Smith.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jared Smith, I'm the CEO of Broward Health Coral Springs, which is of course affiliated with Broward Health, the 10th largest public healthcare system, representing the northern part of Broward County. And I'm also the chair of the South Florida Hospital and Healthcare Association.
Thank you, Mr. And then Mr. Bob Swindell.
Good morning. I'm Bob Swindell. I'm president and CEO of the Greater Lauderdale Alliance. We're the economic development organization for Broward County.
Mr. Randall Vitale.
Good morning, Randall Vitale. I'm the president of Hoffman's Chocolates, a BBX Capital company, and also the co-chair of the Transportation Committee for the Broward Workshop.
Thank you.
The Honorable Beverly Williams.
Hi, good morning, all. I'm Beverly Williams, and I'm Commissioner of the City of Lauderdale Lakes, where we have 5 fearless females who run that city. I'm also president of the Broward League of Cities and a certified master gardener who governs 2 gardens in the City of Lauderdale Lakes, teaching our residents how to grow and eat healthy. And thank you.
Thank you for being here. And then Chair Geller, you want to do a brief?
I'm Steve Geller, media past mayor of Broward County Commissioner, former Florida Senate Minority Leader, chair, immediate past chair and chair-elect of the South Florida Regional Planning Council, et cetera, et al. By the way, Newton, I'll give you one last chance, Newton. If not, OIC is a organization that works to create job programs, particularly among returning prisoners, low income zip codes, and other people that have specific problems in finding jobs. And Newton really has done an excellent job in that organization, although we can't hear him. Okay. At this point in time, I would ask everybody, everyone has been sent a copy of the minutes of the last meeting, the meeting of September 13th, right here. And yeah.
Mr. Beasley is here. He just put in the chat that he was having issues, I guess, unmuting himself, but he is present. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you unmute yourself now? Has he told us about himself? What group?
No, he has not. I just mentioned his organization, but I don't know if he can unmute himself now.
I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I thought I said present when you called my name the first time, but I'm Rick Beasley, the Executive Director of Career Source South Florida. Our legal name is the South Florida Workforce and Investment Board. We cover employment and training programs for Dade County and Monroe County. I also am the chairman of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. As I was saying, everyone has previously been sent the minutes. Some of you have them here in front of you. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the September 13th meeting? Are there any additions, hi there, or corrections to the September 13th meeting? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes.
Who said that?
Stephen Abrams.
Moved by Steve Abrams.
Second by Lynn
Seconded
Goldman.
by Newton Sannon, who just walked in. Please show that the minutes approved without objection. And at this point in time, I would also like to introduce our council staff. And if you want one, just tell us your title. Is Isabel Cosio Carballo?
Executive Director of the South Florida Regional Planning Council.
Mark Cassidy?
Economic Development and Research Manager.
Alicia Lopez?
Morning, everyone. I'm behind the camera. Nice to see everyone.
And you are?
I am the Clean Cities Coordinator and Revolving Loan Fund Specialist here.
Thank you. Geralda?
Program Manager for Economic Disaster Recovery for the CARES Act.
Okay. And Christina Miskus?
Good morning, Senior Planner with the South Florida Regional Planning Council.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. At this point in time, I think I saw Gregory Viday on the present online. Is that correct? Mr. Viday, are you on?
I'm here, sir.
Great. If you would care to introduce yourself and then make your presentation, sir.
Sure, be happy to. Chair Geller, members of the South Florida Regional Planning Council, thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Greg Viday. I'm the Economic Development Representative for the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration, and I'm the rep for Florida. So all things Florida are discussed with me, and I wanted to provide a fairly brief overview. We have some limited time today. I wanted to give people basically a very quick overview of EDA, what we do, and then I would encourage you all to look at our website, eda.gov. We have a lot of good information there that you can explore at your convenience. So I'm going to talk to you about EDA. Go ahead and advance the next slide, please. So EDA, what makes EDA unique in the sort of the pantheon of federal agencies out there is that we are the only federal agency that exclusively focuses on economic development. And we have a number of programs that deal with different facets of economic development. And by what I mean is we understand that locales throughout the country and Florida have very different trajectories along the economic development continuum. So some communities may need to do economic development planning. Some communities may know what they want to focus on. And we have a number of construction and non-construction related programs under the programs that I'm projecting here that really provide a wide range of flexibility and tools to help communities meet their respective economic development needs. On next slide, please. So EDA works with a number of eligible applicants, and these are projected on the slide here. Typically, our applicants are local governments, states, cities, counties, special subdivisions of the state. In Florida, there are 10 regional planning councils, and we refer to them as district organizations. The South Florida Planning Council is the economic development district that is recognized by EDA as the district for their 3-county South Florida region. We federally recognized Indian tribes. EDA does a lot of work with colleges and universities, across, not only across Florida, but across all the other states. And we do work with nonprofit organizations.
I'm going to briefly interrupt you for 1 second, sir. On behalf of those people like me who have old eyes, I'd like to thank whoever just increased the size of the presentation. Mr. Bidet.
You're not the only one, Chair Geller. I wear glasses too, so I appreciate that. We work. Let me just go back one slide, Mark, or on the final point there that we do work with nonprofit organizations. Increasingly, we're having a lot of discussions with nonprofit organizations, 501c3s, for example, but they must be engaged in a bona fide economic development project. In other words, we don't build affordable housing, we don't feed the poor, we don't deal with social welfare programs. We deal with economic development projects. Next slide, please. So it's somewhat easier to understand what EDA does when we kind of dive into two buckets. One is a construction bucket and one is a non-construction bucket, because we have a lot of different things that are going on. But suffice to say, under the various construction programs that we have, we can build infrastructure, we can rehab infrastructure. We've built specialized training facilities. We have built business incubators. We involved in developing workforce training facilities. We've done projects at airports, ports, and industrial parks. The screenshots there are just some examples of projects that we've done. On the non-construction side, we can consider feasibility studies, target industry studies, disaster recovery strategies, revolving funds, and increasingly, things like supply chain analysis, which everyone is feeling the pinch from. So no doubt. Next slide, please. So it's important to understand that EDA is unlike organizations like HUD and other federal agencies. We don't have a specific allocation to a state or to an entitlement community. We don't operate that way. All our programs are run on a competitive merit basis. That means simply that you have to put in your best application and you have to understand that it's a competitive process. And only competitive projects, generally speaking, have a good chance of being funded. So part of the early on discussion you have when you're talking about a project is to have that early discussion with myself, and so I can establish a few early on things such as eligibility of the project, applicant eligibility, and then we can get into the question of the application itself. So within the parameters of that competitive process, a project needs to align with our investment priorities. I'll speak to that in a moment. Because we are an economic development agency, we want to know that a project, whether it's a construction project or a non-construction project, has a high likelihood of creating high quality jobs. And we define high quality jobs as jobs that pay higher than the prevailing wage in the region that is defined. So Broward County, Miami-Dade, or a combination of those two. We want communities to leverage public and private resources where they can. We want to know that applicants can actually manage a project and can get it underway in a relatively short order. And we want people to present us with clear scopes of work with measurable economic outcomes. Next slide, please. And again, I apologize, these are hard to see. I will refer you all to EDA's but we have 7 investment priorities. The administration has adopted a couple of big ones. Equity is a very important investment priority. That essentially speaks to the notion that we want to know how projects are going to improve economic conditions for disadvantaged communities and geographies. Recovery and resiliency, workforce development, manufacturing, technology-based economic development, and sustainable development, and exports and foreign direct investment. So when we review a project that comes before us, we want to know that the project meets at least one or more of these 7 investment priorities. Again, that's why it's important to have that discussion with myself and the Regional Planning Council early on, so that I can get a feel for the parameters of the project. Next slide, please. It's important, and I'm glad that I'm presenting to the CEDS committee today. One of the important aspects of the CEDS committee and what they do is that each project that comes to EDA must be consistent with the region's EDA approved comprehensive economic development strategy. And as I mentioned before, each of the regional planning councils are designated economic development districts by EDA. So all 67 counties are members of one of the 10 regional planning councils. So what does EDA expect from the South Florida Regional Council and the CEDS committee in particular? Well, we expect the committee and the South Florida Regional Council to prepare and maintain a comprehensive economic development strategy. We expect the region to assist with implementation activities that are indicated in the CEDS. We do expect the Regional Planning Council to provide assistance to their local government for economic development projects and grant applications. And we want to know that there is demonstrated support of potential applications to EDA. So that's, in a very quick way, that provides some context as to why the CEDS committee is very important. Next slide, please. So as far as economic development districts, they do a lot of different things, and South Florida no less so than the other 9 regional planning council districts. They help really define eligible regions and projects. They help to define economic development opportunities. This is a screenshot of a CEDS. They assist eligible applicants with project development. They explore funding opportunities, and they provide assistance with grants. And increasingly, resilience from a standpoint is a very critical issue. Now, when we speak about resilience, we're not speaking about environmental resilience, although we acknowledge that's an important issue. We're speaking about economic resilience. How do communities and regions become more resilient, economically speaking? And they can do that in a lot of different ways, through diversifying the economic base, to providing technical assistance to businesses, to establishing revolving loan funds, and a host of other things. Next slide, please. The CEDS becomes important because it's a conduit for resources for your region. EDA recently, in July of this year, released a number of funding opportunities under the auspices of the American Rescue Plan Act that was signed by President Biden in March of this year. And so we've been very busy looking at trying to really provide outreach on the different programs. I've had a lot of discussions with communities across Florida about EDA's programs, whether it happens to be under travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, to economic adjustment, and Build Back Better, and Good Job Challenge. So we have a lot of things going on. It's a very busy time for us. Suffice to say, CEDS really becomes important that way, because it really does provide a window to some of these federal funding opportunities. Next slide. That's a very quick overview. There is my contact information. Best way to reach me is either email or cell, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that committee members might have. And I wanted to again extend my thank you to the committee and to the South Regional Planning Council, Isabel, and your staff for inviting me to speak with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bidet. And one thing that distinguishes this meeting from a lot of the other meetings that you go to, and I'll get to another one in a moment, is he actually has money. So he has it, we want it, and we need to figure out the types of programs that we can author that meet the criteria that Mr. Bidet has set forth, that will actually bring federal grants to Dade, Broward, and Monroe counties working in these targeted areas. That's the real whole purpose of the CEDS program, is to come up with a comprehensive strategy as to what we can do that will bring additional federal aid from the economic development representative of the U.S. Department of Commerce to South Florida. So are there any questions first? Let me ask in the room, and then I'll ask online. Are there any questions for Mr. Verde? Yes, Mr. Shannon.
I would just say to Mr. Verde, thank you for the presentation, and just, let him know that there are several of us working together and intending to submit an application on the Good Jobs Challenge. And so we appreciate this contact information so we can get maybe, our proposed strategy. If I understand the offer, that we're going to submit our proposed strategy for his reaction, if that's what I heard your offer is.
I've been working with Mr. Shannon on that, actually. He's really doing it all, but I'll be sending a letter of support. And you weren't here when I said nice things about you. I think you were more.
I did.
Okay. Yes. Are there additional, Isabel?
I just want to make a comment, which is we are here to help you connect with EDA because Greg is one person. And so he works through the whole state. So this is one of the roles of the EDD is to help coordinate with Greg and set up times for conversation meetings. So please feel free to let us know, when you want to speak with him, and we'll work with you and him to set it up. And that goes to everybody.
Are there any additional questions, comments, everyone in the room? Yes.
Just curious, Greg, thank you as well for your presentation. I do think that there's a huge opportunity on the workforce development side, particularly in healthcare. But out of curiosity, what are the size ranges of the grants that are possibly offered that come out of the EDA?
Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer, and that's because when we have, let me try to answer it this way. Through our regular programs, if you're talking construction, and the regular program that I would be focused on in that respect would be our public works program. An average grant size is about 1.5 to $2.2 million. We can go up to 3 potentially. That's on a 50% basis. So 50% federal share, 50% local share. So that would translate to about a $3, $4 to $5 million project in total. So that's on the construction side. On the non-construction side, again, grant sizes vary from, as small as, $50,000 to, $500,000 potentially, depending on what the scope of work is and what it's intended to do. When we have,
however, when you have special programs like what we've just had.
Exactly, Chair Geller, good point. So when we that are designed to deal with the exigent situation caused by the coronavirus pandemic, then those grant sizes essentially come off. And so we're not limited by the ones that I mentioned under regular appropriations. So the grant sizes may be from anywhere from, a couple million to $10 million. Now, having said that, there are some practical considerations, and the practical considerations are when we get appropriation, the dollars are divided amongst EDA's 6 regional offices. So I'm with the Atlanta regional offices that covers 8 states in the Southeast U.S. And so we get a special share of for example, the $3 billion under ARPA, and that's divided into the programs that we normally operate. So it's important to realize that when you see the top line number, that's okay, but know that the devil is in the details, and that's why you need to reach out to me to have discussion about what we're asking for and what the total project costs are, provide further guidance as to whether that project is going to be doable. We always tell people, ask for what you need, but understand that if we find the project to be competitive, we may fund it at the ask. We may fund it at a different amount. And so we always need to get into those details when we talk with people. So that's a long-winded way of saying
Depends.
we have nuance regarding grant size. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? We are going to need to be, we're running around 5 minutes late, so we are going to need to wrap up quickly. Are there any additional questions?
Yeah, this is Jonathan Guevara at the College of the Florida Keys.
Yes, sir.
And
You're recognized.
Greg, I want to say thank you, first of all, because you worked with us very closely on a recent project that we completed.
Yes, sir.
And to those who are listening, what he said is actually spot on. He's been very, very helpful. And it is, as he says, it all depends. But it is a very timely, competitive process. And Greg and his staff have been very, very helpful shepherding all of our processes and applications along the way so that we were able to be successful.
And Dr. Guevara, thank you so much. And I really wanted to come to the topping off ceremony and the groundbreaking. Hopefully next year we will be examining our travel policies. I know that our headquarters folks are looking at it right now. And so hopefully next year we'll be in a position to get back on the road, which is something that I'm excited about, and actually meeting with people in person, because it's something that I miss, and I truly think is important to have that face-to-face conversation. And Dr. Guevara, just, you know, you've got great staff, and I really appreciated working with you all. So thank you.
I will take one more question if there is, and then we need to move on to stay on schedule. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Viday? If not, thank you, Mr. Viday. I appreciate your being here today, sir. I understand you'll stay on for the rest of the meeting, correct? Great,
Yes.
thank you, sir. Okay, at this point in time, I would like to present the CEDS annual report. Mark Cassidy will make that report, and at the conclusion of that, I'll be asking for an approval vote. You recognize Mr. Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. Everybody can hear me all right as well?
Well, I can, but I'm sitting next to you.
It was a virtual.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Before I went ahead and summarized the annual report for the South Florida Regional Planning Council CEDS for 2021, go ahead and flip the slide around up. But I just wanted to give an updated timeline of what we've done since the first CEDS committee meeting and now. What we did after the first meeting was send out the survey, which you responded to. Hopefully, if you had not yet, we will send it out one more time. We really would appreciate your feedback on that. But essentially, you gave us feedback on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, selected a focus group to be a part of the work group, and then gave us some performance measures that are appropriate to your focus area. And so what we were looking to do in those meetings was discuss economic diversification. And we took that all for the first work group meeting and started discussing Aralda's CARES Act program, economic recovery and resiliency. And we took some of the information that we've been gathering through the CEDS process and started distilling that for some best practices and strategies. Got your feedback on that. And we have basically outlined a series of goals, objectives, and strategies, which we want your feedback on today to finalize and move forward to get those projects like Chair Geller has mentioned. That's perfect. Right, so today, the annual report, I'll hand it off to Aralda. We'll go through each of those goals and objectives. And then at the end, I'll just give a broad summary of all of the SWOT responses and performance measures that you gave to us. We'll take all of this feedback from this meeting, and we will walk out of our February work group meeting with a series of priority projects for Aralda's program goals and objectives. But today, I will go over the South Florida Regional Planning Council 2021 annual report. What this is just, annual report, typical. EDA requested us to provide some updated demographic economic data, explain to them some of the adjustments that we're making to the strategy, and the activities that we've done in the past year and what our plans are for the next year. So just some of the highlights of the economic and demographic data that we updated. Unemployment nationally has been recovering, but locally is starting to stall. Nationally is catching up to Florida's progress. Labor force has been significantly impacted, as we all know, but the trend is starting to cool off, even though definitely not returning back to previous levels. Looking at national job opening data, leisure and hospitality, of course, is leading the recovery, as are other industries that were on-site based, as opposed to other industries that were able to adapt and work remotely. They've been growing slow and steadily. As far as you can go back real quick and over. Just wanted to touch on, of course, in Miami-Dade, unemployment is among one of the highest counties in the state, whereas Monroe County is actually one of the lowest and has been faring really well recently. And then a couple notes on some population data, because the 2020 census data came out, which are actual counts instead of estimates, which is a really valuable piece of information. Showed that Monroe County's population increased about 10%, which is very high. Basically, it's probably a situation where the estimates were a little bit low and the actual counts are starting to catch up to that. And then in contrast, Miami-Dade County's population actually declined in 2020. And what caused that was you can look at the components of change, and international migration went way down. Of course, as nobody internationally is moving into Miami, people from Miami still continue to move to Broward County and other areas like they do.
Sorry.
So Miami-Dade had a very, very slight population decline. That'll recover, they'll go back to normal. But that basically had a drag on Miami-Dade's recovery economically, whereas Monroe County has been faring a lot better recently. So in addition to some of the, census data and other, government data that we've been collecting and updating, we started collecting our own data as well. We've mentioned to you multiple times about our COVID-19 survey, which we distributed to economic development stakeholders in the region to find out what the biggest impacts to small businesses were. Here are the top 3 issues that we found from that: loss of income, loss of financial support, and miscommunication from government and businesses. So we take that, and then another report that we did in the past year was our economic impact report, which we've mentioned multiple times, using our economic forecasting software, essentially expecting that, leisure and hospitality and other industries would start to be resilient, like on the right, come up with, adaptive strategies, like putting people outside into the street if the street is being used less, things like that. So we expected that industries would be resilient. Broward would be about middle of the road, and Miami-Dade would have a pretty strong recovery, and Monroe slightly lagged behind because of the leisure and hospitality, but of course, very dependent on the recovery. So that was just some of the data updates, and then also just some of the other activities that we've been doing at the Economic Development District, where of course our CARES Act outreach activities, some of our webinars, technical assistance for the American Rescue Plan Act fund applications, like we mentioned, our revolving loan fund and CARES Act revolving loan fund, which still has money ready to be loaned out and more coming in. So definitely spread the word on that. And then of course, our other regular comprehensive land use planning, transportation, and resiliency planning work. But the big update this year to our CEDS was incorporating the CARES Act element and economic disaster recovery into our existing CEDS. And so what we've been doing to incorporate that CARES Act element was essentially evaluating our goals and objectives in general as part of our 2017-2022 CEDS, which we have sent out to you. If you need, you can also check it out on the website, which is posted. But essentially our goals and objectives are organized according to these 3 categories, or pillars as they're called. So innovation and competitiveness, opportunity, prosperity, vitality, and sustainability. And so you can go to the next. So each of those pillars have a number of goals and then an objective to go along with the goal. These goals are an example of some of the goals among more, which we have identified as staff based on your feedback and all the information that we've gathered that are related to pandemic recovery and being ready to respond to the next type of situation like this. So these are the goals. For example, 1, enhance resilience of the South Florida economy in the face of natural disasters and change to the national and state economies. And so the correlating objective, train government staff, and disseminate information on plans and contingency actions before, during, and after disasters. That's just one example of a number of goals and objectives that Aralda will go through each one of these individually, and that is where we will really want your feedback on, is this relevant to COVID-19 and other pandemics, being resilient economically to that and other shocks. And then moving forward, we will take these and actually come up with projects such as this person can be hired by this organization to disseminate that information on the plans, et cetera, et cetera. And so that are the contents of our annual report. It is posted online as well. We distributed that to you, but now we're ready to vote to approve.
Thank you. And I will make further comments on this after the next presentation by Aralda.
Chairman Geller, may I ask a question, please? This is Lynn Goldman.
Get to questions. I was just going to say I will be making further comments on this later, but I want to point out that this is not just going to be another group of meeting, because we've all been to those where we say, gee, wouldn't it be better if we had more affordable housing? Wouldn't it be better if we had better health care? We're going to be asking for specific items to work on, and I will get to that shortly. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if there are any questions. Ms. Goldman.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Cassidy, in the last slide, you addressed apprenticeship programs as one of the objectives. And I worry when we use the word apprenticeship, because that is a very formal process. So there's a lot of people on this call that know that, versus a work-based learning internship experience. So are you looking for specifically apprenticeships, or are you looking for the work-based learning internship opportunity?
Great, thank you for your question. Well, so we selected goals and objectives from the existing set. So that is how it currently is stated in our current sets. And the idea is to reevaluate this and do exactly what you're doing. Ask the question, do we want to keep this goal as that, or do we want to modify that? And so when we turn it over to Aralda and discuss each one of these goals, this is the meeting that we can then modify that and set that in stone so that it is more relevant and more applicable. Does that answer your question?
We're going to go to workforce.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Lynn, in a couple of slides, Ms. Goldman, you'll see all these slides of Mark's point, and then once we stop there, we all agree if we keep the word apprenticeship in there, or does it make sense or does it not make sense? So
thank you.
Part of it, yes, you're welcome.
Okay. Are there any additional questions, Mr. Cassidy? Yes, Newton first.
Sure. And I suspect we may get this, and we go into more nuance with the presentation. But to your point about a little more rigor, Chair Geller, when we talk about the workforce piece, I'm hoping that we define the different kinds of segments and folks that are coming into the workforce, because that would inform the corresponding training agency and strategy. Obviously, there are folks coming out of high school and a respective strategy for that. Those who are your incumbent workers that would strategy for that. Those who are coming from impoverished communities and the respective corresponding organizations that would include community-based organizations, et cetera. So that's the kind of nuance as we define the kinds of people who are coming into the workforce and kind of match them with the corresponding training agency strategy. That's the only kind of nuance that I hope we dig into.
I agree. Well, I agree that at least has to be one of the nuances that we're looking at. And I had mentioned your work, for example, with returning prisoners and low-income work groups. I don't know, but that was, I think, while you were in the process of walking.
I did hear that.
Okay.
Check his resume.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Swindell.
Just a quick question for Mark. So when we hear a statistic like the population in Monroe County is grown by about 10%, is that over a year to year or since the last census was done in 2010?
Right. So I was, to clarify, so the reported from 2019 to 2020, the 2020 is 10% higher than 2019. That is what the data would say on a year by year basis. But knowing how the data is collected, I would say that it is probably, instead of jumping 10% in 1 year, of course, it was underestimated before that.
Or overestimated this year.
But yes, but the idea is that the 2020 census counts are supposed to be the most reliable census data point that we do have, as opposed to the estimate. But of course, you can't count everybody, so.
So we've been working really with estimates from 2010. We work with estimates annually until we do the full recount in 2020.
Right.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And there have been a lot, I've received a lot of complaints because Broward County is reapportioning from a lot of people who've said that there was a severe undercount this year. And maybe there was, and maybe there wasn't. We will never know. What I can tell you is we are required to use the official census data. You know, whether it is accurate, whether the 10 years ago was accurate, whether this year is more accurate, less accurate, we will never know, but that is the data that we will be using. So are there any additional questions before we move on? Any additional questions? Not seeing any. Let me ask for a vote to approve the annual CEDS report that y'all just saw, that Mark presented. Is there a motion?
So moved. Greg Hale.
Move to approve, Juliet Rowlack.
Okay, Juliet Rulock moves and seconded by Mr. Smith. And is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show that adopted unanimously.
Aye.
All right, Arauda.
Yes.
Arauda, I'm sorry, is it Agali or Agoli?
Agoli. It's okay.
Okay. We'll present the, boy, I'm so happy we're only 2 minutes off schedule. Progress on the CARES Act strategic plan, including the work group meetings, and that will then roll into present the CARES draft goals and objectives for committee approval. And I expect we'll have substantial discussion on that, including comments from me. So, Ms. Agoli, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. So good morning, everyone, and thank you again for taking time off your busy schedules and joining our meeting today. And most of you have attended our work group meetings in the last 2 months where we discussed the goals and objectives for the CARES Act that will help us develop an economic resilience plan that supports economic diversification, job creation, capital investment, and workforce development. So from all the data that we as staff have collected, as Mark mentioned, the survey, the outreach webinars, COVID-19 impact report, other research from the actions that were submitted in the grand scope of work and the work group discussions, the following slides will show you the draft goals and objectives that were identified. So after each goal and objective are presented to you, as Chairman Geller said, we need your help as to how will we achieve these goals as they relate to the pandemic. If these goals fit within the pandemic, do you agree? Do you disagree? Any other input or feedback you can give us, we would love to hear you. Most importantly, identify specific actions and projects to include in the economic resilience plan. So please also bear in mind that we are aware that some of the following goals are very generic and they apply to any other natural or economic disaster. And also these goals and objectives and actions, as a reminder, will be integrated under the umbrella of the CEDS. And this plan, also lastly, the plan needs to be more equitable, focusing on equity, with opportunities for people of all backgrounds, particularly those in the underprivileged and those in other marginalized groups, to enjoy a high quality of life and create, build, and pass on wealth to future generations. So first of all, I just want to set the stage and define economic resilience per EDA guidelines. From a long, what is EDA? What is economic resilience? From a long-term perspective, resilient economies find ways to adapt to changing conditions, such as disruptions to major supply chains, or so that future losses are minimized and continuing stresses are adequately managed. In addition to a build capacity to withstand these shocks, resilient economies take necessary measures to prevent and avoid major disruptions. And lastly, for economic resilience strategies, that please keep in mind, to be successful, equity must be an integrated component of long-range plans, ensuring that all who live and work here have access to good education, affordable housing, transportation, and they can further prosper. With that said, just setting the stage. So these are the goals that we, from the work group meetings, the outreach, and the survey, as Mark mentioned, they all fit in within those research topics that they also mentioned. So communication, it falls under innovation and competitiveness. It was part of one of the top major issues of mentioned in the survey and also from our outreach programs. There's a lack of communication from government agencies, either be that they were not giving proper instructions or how to navigate to help businesses how to navigate PPP loans or whatnot. So and the goals, if you look at this, the set goal and the actions that we came up with, they are pretty generic, yes. So, but I'll give you a second to just go over them, and some of the actions that are under this communication goal are create a communication strategy plan, maintain open communication channels, provide timely and accurate information, unify response in communicating and designate the key members of your crisis communications team and their backups. So as I mentioned, these actions would fall under the CEDS goal, which is to enhance the resilience of the South Florida economy in the face of natural disasters and changes to the national and state economies through increased awareness. Sorry, it's a mouthful. You can all read it. But before I move on to the next goal, Mark and I thought that maybe we should discuss after each goal so it's fresh in your memory and I don't have to go back to all these slides. Do you approve of this with the goal number 1 when it comes to communication? Is there anything that we're missing? And how, I know it's very generic. This applies to any disaster, but is there anything missing in here that we need to add? Are there any projects that we can apply to this goal? So it's open for discussion.
Okay, yeah, I would ask, Ms. Chairman, and it says specifically train government. Is there a reason why we would solely want to have governments specifically informed and engaged in this strategy from a communication standpoint? I'm just curious about that.
I am assuming that the purpose of this is have the government disseminate the information to all of the other groups. They would disseminate that to the private sector. They would disseminate it to the nonprofits, but government is the one that will be collecting the information. And we need to make sure that when we have that information, that gets distributed efficiently to everybody else that will need that information and distribute it to the private sector and nonprofits.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm going with it. So long as there is a comprehensive strategy about how that happens, I think we will be a better region if we think detailed about, because there are going to be different strategies based on the subgroup, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my only observation, is how we then strategically think about the strategy to get the communication out to all segments of the community. That's my only point.
Okay, let me ask a question to Geralda. Geralda, can I ask you to just quickly, and then get back to this, show us each of your 5 goals, and then we will go back a little, because I think that people need to have the better idea of what it is that our goals are going to be. So let me ask you to just quickly run through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then go back to 1.
Yes, perfect. So moving to goal number 2, the second goal focuses on workforce development that fits under the opportunity and prosperity pillar. And as we all know, the region's workforce is mostly concentrated in the hospitality and retail industries with low-paying jobs, and those jobs were most affected by the pandemic. So there is a need for workforce development and change and training, as everyone has mentioned from our work group meetings and our outreach webinars as well. So why we decided that this fits within the pandemic as a goal number 2 under the CEDS. So to prepare a skilled workforce that supports the business community through programs and tools that address education, training, and the attraction, retention of qualified workers. With this,
Okay.
objective number one is, yes.
Move on to goal number 3. I just want, again, a very quick one, then I'm going to ask you to go back to one. Okay, oh no, this page.
Got it. So, so this is again under workforce development. Sorry, CEDS goal 3. This is from focusing on business attraction and attention and retention. Sorry. So there was a lack of small business retention plans as it was identified by everyone, and what happened during the pandemic, the complete shutdown. The limited efforts to diversify the South Florida economy were hampered by the pandemic, and small business owners did not have a safety net that lasted more than 3 to 6 months. So the question is, how do we support the small businesses or the mom and pop shops? Moving on to goal number 4, this falls under affordable housing, mobility, and access. As everyone knows, most of you know, it's a correlation between affordable housing and transportation and the cost of living. And these issues have been around and extensively talked about prior to the pandemic. But COVID-19 enforced and reinforced the notion that there is a dire need for especially affordable housing, given that most of the affected population were the underprivileged or low-income employees. And with that, that's the last goal for the CEDS.
Okay, so now if I can ask you to go back, I just wanted the group to have an idea of what our goals are. If you can go back to goal number 1 now. Thank you. And let me ask a question first of staff and then I guess to the group, which is, if these are the 4 goals that we're going to be focusing on, I guess the question is, are we determining now if these are in fact what the 4 goals should be? Can we enlarge those? Can we add to those? But today is the date that we're going to be establishing what our goals are. So is that correct?
That is correct.
Today we can still enlarge or alter, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You approve these or don't approve these or add more as they relate to the pandemic.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned the pandemic. Now, I'd like to, this is what I was talking with Isabel and with Mark about. The CEDS is not just, I mean, we're coming up with the plan for the next 5 years, which is not just pandemic. So can Isabel or Mark, can you clarify, I think what it is that we are doing that is CARES Act pandemic related versus our overall economic development plan for the next 5 years. So can either Aralda, Mark, or Isabel, can you clarify?
Well, I think that you essentially, described it accurately. The CARES Act, when Aralda says CARES Act, the CARES Act is a strategic plan that will be integrated into our existing and new CEDS as an element or a chapter or a sub-piece. And so for all of our focus areas, we will do the same thing as this CARES Act process of determining which goals and objectives we agree with from the previous CEDS, modify them or add, and then take that to the next level of identifying projects to carry them out. There are the focus areas of each of the work groups to divide, the categories of topics. But first, the priority is to create a plan and some projects to specifically address not only recovering from the economic disaster of COVID, but also being ready to adapt to the next pandemic or any other economic disaster or shock.
I'm just saying, so for example, item number 8 on the agenda says present CARES draft goals and objectives for committee approval. What I think we're doing is presenting our overall CEDS draft goals and objectives for committee approval, not limited to the CARES Act. Am I correct?
No. So in our review of our goals and objectives, we have selected the ones that are related to COVID-19 and pandemic response. So these are the ones, there are additional goals like, expand, there are a dozen other goals that weren't specifically related to the feedback of what to do for COVID-19.
And when will those be coming up?
Those will be addressed after this. So we'll do the same process at the next CEDS committee meeting and then in work group meeting.
Gotcha. So this is just for today, we're approving the CARES Act.
Right.
We're a portion of it.
Select goals that are related to pandemic response.
Okay, and at the next meeting, we will have the final CEDS strategy committee meeting, or the next CEDS strategy committee meeting, we will be dealing with the other issues, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. So understanding that this is, primarily CARES Act related, let's look at item number goal 1 first. Obviously, as you can see, this is heavily, by the way, is anybody monitoring the yes, the chat, thank you. This is heavily geared specifically towards disaster. So are there any comments?
We focus on government. But I'm thinking about some of the other large organizational entities like our colleges and universities. It seems that they should be almost on that front line of training as well, since they have such a large, group of stakeholders.
Okay.
Yeah. And then,
Well, I guess also Mr. Guevara also said something similar, train staff at government and other related entities.
Okay.
And let's see.
That would be under number 3 under goal 1. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Noted.
Okay.
Noted.
All right. Is there additional comment? Is there any additional debate on goal number 1? If not, is there a motion to, I can either take a vote on all 4 at the end, but I think it'll be simpler to vote on each as we go. Is there a motion to approve CEDS goal number 1?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Nelson Fernandez, seconded by Newton Sannon.
You got it right first.
Okay, Sannon, sorry. All right, is there any discussion? Seeing no additional discussion, it's time to vote. All those in favor of adopting CEDS goal number 1, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show it adopted unanimously. Please move on to the CEDS goal number 2.
So right, so
Rhoda?
this falls, right, says number 2 falls under workforce development. To have a prepared, skilled workforce that supports the business community through programs and tools that address education, training, and the attraction, retention of qualified workers.
Was there another slide for goal number 2 as well?
Yes, there's only a 5th action that I put here, and then I left these empty because I wasn't, since workforce development is such a hot topic when it comes to the pandemic and the CARES program. So I wasn't sure if the committee had any more, and I left these open for discussion or just leave it as is. So
thank you.
I'll go back to this one. To Ms. Goldman's point, she said to change the word apprenticeship to what, if I remember correctly, Ms. Goldman, if you could.
Please, Lynn. I said either work-based learning or internships.
I would object to taking the word apprenticeship out. I think the way of dealing with it is adding language. So, because apprenticeships is a term of art, which also tends to bring funding down here from both the state and federal government. So I would say invest in apprenticeship and Lynn, what internships, or what else would you suggest?
Right, and I think that's a great point, Senator Geller, to make sure apprenticeship stays in there. But if we could add work-based learning experience.
Yes. Okay, is there any objection to adding that language? All right.
No,
So
I think that's
we're going to
I
have
think that's an excellent point, because some of the things like apprenticeship and internship from the educational side, those are very specific programs, and it excludes entities that may not want to go through that sort of specificity.
Okay, so just to make sure we have the wording correct, invest
Yes.
in apprenticeship and workplace training programs. Was that correct, Glenn?
Work-based, yes.
I think she said work-based
Work-based
learning.
learning experience.
Work-based learning experience programs. Please, let's make sure we have the accurate wording down. Okay, let's see what else.
So under this, these are just some of the actions, such as support organizations such as AMP Skills or local technical colleges, Lynn's colleges, all three of them, or Miami-Dade, obviously, in the Tri-County area. Support existing community-informed career development services, provide effective workforce development supports, and address barriers to quality employment for the underprivileged. And also, I just want to say, like Mark said, we're looking also for projects. I know one project I can mention, since I know Mr. Finney and Mr. Swindell are here. Well, Mr. Bisley just left, but they were part of our workforce development outreach program. And in regards to workforce development and equity, Mr. Finney mentioned that they have the Miami Community Ventures, which helps. It's a program that the Beacon Council has created, has put together to help the underprivileged and low income with job retention and employment and workforce development. So that's just one example that we can use that as a successful project.
I agree. As I look at this under number 1, I might add the local colleges that used to be the community colleges. The associate programs that they offer are frequently among the best sources of the technical skills that we have. I don't know how we can phrase that, but I think that we should also talk about, instead of just saying local technical colleges, but local colleges, and perhaps including technical, that offer the AA programs or AS programs. And secondly, under number, I guess, 2, I think that someplace here we should be specifically addressing the certain hard to employ groups. I would include returning prisoners, the low-income zip codes, and possibly, I was going to say veterans was the last thing I was going to say, possibly. We've actually made great strides already veterans used to be, they had a disadvantage of being hired. Right now, from what I've seen, people are preferring to hire veterans. I think the people that may have a bigger problem are not the veterans, but the people that are members of the National Guard and Reserve, because I've seen employers being reluctant to hire them because they're never sure when they're going to be called up, as opposed to the veterans who have developed important job skills. So we may, throwing this open for discussion about adding 2 areas. Number 1, the colleges that are providing AAs, and secondly, specifically mentioning low-income zip codes, returning prisoners, and Guard and Reserve. And we can discuss these separately. I'm going to make this informal. What does anybody think of, first on the colleges part?
Mr. Chair, this is Greg Hale, if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. President.
I'm supportive of each of the categories that you've described. Particularly, I continue to think about this, as you all detailed earlier, within the context and framework of CARES and trying to be responsive. And certainly the categories that you've identified are folks who either taking responsibility for being responsive, or those who we intend to serve who need the response. So I think all of those categories fit well. I would actually think about adding one more, and maybe this is in the goal regarding language, because here we talk about supporting the business community, which is obviously great language. The piece that I don't want to lose, again, particularly in light of CARES, is that I think about our hospital partners. And one of the things that is a critical topic for us throughout the state of Florida, and certainly we're no different here in South Florida, is need to satisfy the nursing shortage, which has only been accelerated in light of what we've been through for the last couple of years. So I would think about whether it be supporting the business and, I don't know what the term is, hospital community, or I see someone else adding some language, something that broadens it a little bit further because there's a significant need there.
Okay, I was just asking if there was a separate healthcare goal that should be moved under. And perhaps we do need a goal 5 to just deal with healthcare, when obviously when you're dealing with COVID and emergencies in particular, COVID in particular, emergencies in general, maybe we need to add a goal 5 healthcare. So first, let me ask, do we need a goal 5 healthcare? If not, I agree with President Hale that we need to include this here. So what is the view of the committee, either online or in person? Are these 4 goals sufficient, or should we add a goal 5 healthcare? Somebody needs to say something.
I think you can go either way on that one. I think workforce development in healthcare is such a huge opportunity, as Mr. Hale presented. There's a huge workforce shortage around nursing, but it goes beyond that. It's patient care associates, it's other technical staff. And it starts with individuals that could be, coming out of, public school for opportunities where they could have opportunities in transport, food services, the hospitality side of it. So I think it's the continuum, but I think within the workforce development, we should emphasize, because we started off with hospitality and tourism as a major piece, but I think it's hospitality, tourism, and healthcare. Because healthcare too, going back to the original presentation, has higher median jobs and better benefits than most positions as well.
Okay, Rhonda, can I ask you to progress to CEDS goal 2, slide 2?
This is Madeline.
There is space for other here. So instead, do we want to have healthcare under one of the others, or do we want to have it as goal 5?
No, because this one, we had it as objective 2 under goal 2, and we can change it, obviously.
Right.
I'd keep it under 2, because when we talk about workforce development, we need the schools to be partnering. Otherwise, we're going to go into 2 different directions, and the subcommittee under workforce development could be talking about schools, hospitality, technology.
Okay. In that case, we will put this here. Let's get back to the prior slide, and we will see about changing the wording on objective 2.2. President Hale, can you help us on the wording that I wanted on talking about local colleges and the associate degree programs?
Yeah, I think if we add, I think you broadened it well. If you simply said local state colleges and technical colleges, I think that you encompass what we need.
Okay, is there any objection to that? Sure, that done without objection. And was there any objection to adding, and you can segregate any of these out, but I'm offering the 3 together, returning prisoners, low income zip codes, and the National Guard / Reserve. Is there any objection to adding those 3?
But to President Hale, segregating out the kinds of training institutions, if that's what I'm saying he was doing, I would also obviously advocate for community-based organizations to do the same as well. Because that's why I bring up the point about this is more probably a strategy, but are identifying the kinds of people coming into the workforce, because those strategies need to be different.
And I said I was going to speak later, so based on what you've said, every one of us has served on groups that meet together like this and say, gee, wouldn't it be great if we had more jobs? Wouldn't it be great if there was more affordable housing? I don't want this group to be one of those. I want this group, and this will occur at the next two, the committee meetings, the strategy committee meetings. Is that what they're called?
Yes.
Again, the strategy committee meetings, where when we say, all right, this is our goal at our next meetings, we need to come up with concrete, specific recommendations, not just, gee, wouldn't it be great? We want ideas as to exactly how we can implement them.
Mr. Finney had a comment in the chat. He said we should use returning citizens when describing former offenders.
I understand that language. He understands that language. Mr. Finney understands that language. I don't think most people understand that language. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Department of Labor has asked us to help campaign getting folks used to it. So I appreciate that, Mike. And so maybe this is an opportunity for folks to be introduced to the appropriate terminology. They used to be called ex-cons. We certainly want to get away from that, because the idea is, in addition to providing opportunity, we want to get the stigma down for most folks.
Absolutely, I agree with everything you're saying. When I was in the Senate, I battled against, we have a problem legislatively where we keep making more and more things crimes and preventing those people from having jobs. But I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. So no, I'll follow your lead on this. I just want to make sure that people know what we're talking about. And I'm not sure that returning citizens will mean to the general public anything. I mean, are you referring to people that are returning to the United States from abroad? To me, that's a returning citizen. You know, when we talk about illegal aliens, I assume we're talking about people from Mars and Venus. But, you know, we can use whatever language.
That is the universal nomenclature that folks, that we tend to use. And I think the campaign just began.
Okay. All right. Is there any objection to including that language? Seeing no objection, show that included without objection. Are there any additional on this page? Are there any additional comments or questions? If not, let's move on to the next page. Still under status goal 2. Personally speaking, I'm a little concerned about just concentrating on STEM. And I'll give you my view, but which I don't insist on. I share a concern with people, and I've said this many times, who go to college, get large amounts of private loans to get their degree in dance, music, history, or whatever, and then are the best educated, most cultured waiters and waitresses with large debt. On the other hand, I have also thought that many of the liberal arts programs, you know, today, if anything, if history or philosophy, anything that teaches you to read well, think well, and write well, these job skills are in fact very important. You know, I don't know if you got your degree in underwater basket weaving or in phys ed, that those are the kind of degrees that are useful. While again, I think that I'm a history major, so I'll use that as an example. You know, those are useful. So do we want to leave that STEM, or do we want to talk about STEM and liberal arts, or you know, or
keep it general, invest in education?
Just say post-secondary, and that could be certificate training, it could be you know, apprenticeships, it could be all those other things as well. It could be science or, you know, there's aviation programs that Broward College provides that don't necessarily get a degree, but that certification can get you to do a great job.
Okay. And by the way, Broward College, I believe you're still doing this, has a great program where after somebody gets their degree and gets their journeyman's license in a lot of these areas, Broward College, I believe, will give them the first 2 years of college credit. And then there's a program where they teach them entrepreneurship for the last 2 years so that these people can then go out and start their own small businesses. President Haley, are you still doing that?
Yeah, I'm still here and doing that, and we've expanded our entrepreneurship programs.
I think that's a terrific program. But do we want, first of all, I think we've agreed that we're going to be adding healthcare as a number 2 on this page. And is there agree on that?
We should see President Pumiaga's response. It looks, I like it.
Consider language.
Yeah, I like that too.
I like that, and I like the comment about certificate training. And I just want to point out to this group that when students leave the technical colleges, and we have, I think, 18 healthcare programs that we're running right now, we transition and encourage students to continue at Broward College, that they take those credits with them and continue their education. So this should be a seamless flow for, as somebody said, post-secondary education.
Okay, so we're starting to run out of time, partially my fault, sorry. So let's say that under number 2, we're going to add healthcare and authorize staff to come up with the exact wording. We will use language under objective 2.2 substantially similar to who made that recommendation? Can I see the chat again?
Madeline Pumadiega.
Okay, yes.
Ms. Pumadiega.
College. Yes. So we will ask staff to adopt language substantially similar to this, and we will authorize staff to both come up with the language for objective 2.2, which will be substantially similar to that, and language on healthcare as a second thing. Is there anything else under CEDS Goal 2? If not, is there a motion to approve CEDS Goal 2? Again, this is on the CARES Act plan. Is there a motion to approve? A motion to approve is made by Nelson Fernandez and is seconded by Newton Sannon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Show that adopted unanimously. We're on to number 3. If you are going to volunteer to move, I will move it for you. Okay. CEDS Goal number 3. Again, we're going to need to start running through this. International trade, retention of businesses, support grant such as say develop partnership with local banks. Do we have anybody on this committee from the banking community?
I don't think so.
We may want to consider expanding because I think we probably need somebody from the banking community on here.
Alicia, was Mr. Levan from BBX Capital?
Yes, he designated Mr. Randall from Hoffman's Chocolates.
Right. However, he no longer owns Bank United, does he? All right. He's a former banker, but we probably want a current banker. Okay. So
This is Randall Vitale. If you need any topic conversation pieces, I'm a former banker as well, but not a current banker.
Okay. So, all right. You're a reform banker.
He's recovering back.
Right.
Exactly.
I went to chocolate.
Exactly.
Went from one sweet job to another. Never mind. Okay. Has everybody had the opportunity to review business attractions? And is there another slide, or is this the only slide on 3?
It's the only slide.
Okay, because I don't see anything in here on international anything under 1, 2, 3, or 4, unless I missed it.
It's an international trade, I think I see, but
Well, that's at the top of line 1, but when we get into 1, 2, 3, and 4, I don't see anything pertaining to anything international.
So that's part, Mark, if you want to clarify that, that's part of the whole like CEDS goal. And we can keep it because I know you wanted to keep that portion on international
No, I'm
trade.
not suggesting striking international trade. I'm suggesting adding a number 5.
Cool.
Right, unless there's not another page of goal 3, is there?
No, it's not, but I
Okay.
mean, I'll update, no, not a big deal.
Okay, I think it important that we, some of our largest job generators are airports and seaports, which have substantial international trade. And I just today, for those of you who get my emails, sent out one about my about the fact I'd met recently with, I think it's 3 consul generals within the last 6 weeks, talking about trying to increase our both investment and trade with several of the other countries. So I think we should add an additional item on airport, seaport, and international trade. Is there any discussion on that?
There is a comment in the chat. from-
So that we can't ignore international trade. So is there any objection to directing staff to create a 5th bullet that would deal with airport, seaport, and international trade? If not, show that done without objection. Is there anything else on CEDS goal 3 that anybody would like to alter, add, amend, anything else? Yes.
I would think we need to identify what are the incentives for different industries to want to relocate their businesses here to South Florida, and to see if there's things that we can offer them to be more competitive. So then when they're moving their corporate offices and whatnot here, what's going to attract them here? This is all about recruiting businesses. And, Texas got,
Right.
Tesla, and, who's next for us?
Well, and that's an interesting question. There is one school of thought that the way to do that, and the way that that Texas did it, is to be the lowest tax, cheapest, and in some cases that helps. On the other hand, for a lot of the stuff, you need an educated workforce, and the educated workforce is frequently in conflict with having the lowest available taxes. So, I can't answer that, but Bob Swindell specializes in,
saw that coming.
right,
Yeah.
in being the person that attracts business. So Bob, do you have a comment in response to Mr. Smith's question or comment? Derek. Okay, Ms. Smith, would you care to repeat?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I think that there needs to be something like, what do we do to incentivize companies to want to bring their businesses to South Florida? And is it tax incentives? Is it, community redevelopment opportunities where they get tax breaks or property values, whatever it may be? I think there needs to be something in here that we explore. It could be with the EDA as well, to identify things, but to get companies to want to be in Broward County.
As you may know, that it actually is what the Broward Alliance does, and Mr. Swindell is their executive director, chair, or whatever.
It's in all 3, in Miami-Dade in particular, and Broward are working on, those incentive programs as part and parcel of what we do. And each county is adopting its own. So I think that's already in the works. Now, if you want to look at, tax, ad valorem tax rebates and things like that, which we do not use, that would be something new and different. But I would say if you're looking at, if ways to influence companies' decisions, I think, the 2 larger urban counties, I don't know what they're doing in Monroe, but I know in Miami-Dade and Broward, we already have programs in place, and the commission will be reviewing our own local incentive program that will take place at what we've lost at the state level. So I think it's covered what we're already doing, and you may not need to add it to, to what the CEDS is working on.
If I may add something, Chairman Geller.
Yes.
So
Who is speaking?
this is Aralda.
All right.
Speaking.
Right.
So action number 3, the reason why I put it in there, after our program on workforce development with Mr. Swindell and Mr. Finney and Mr. Beasley. So one of the things that Mr. Swindell pointed out at the program said, there is a misconception of the South Florida economy, South Florida as just being a beach town kind of thing, not coming for businesses to come to South Florida. So part of it, and that once they were speaking also for incentives, I put engaging community outreach to catalog existing efforts, and we can add after efforts, existing efforts and or incentives to identify opportunities for alignment. So in my head, after that program, action number 3 came to mind to sort of like help advertise South Florida as a go-to place instead of put your flip-flops on and go to the beach kind of thing.
Geraldo, let me say, and Bob has heard me say this more times than I'm sure he can count. Not talking about your math skills. Our former governor, Governor Scott, would call a press conference every time there were 20, he would create 20 jobs at a Wawa. And I'm not making that up. He had multiple press conferences specifically over Wawas. I have no interest in that. What I have been relentless since I was elected is pushing for highly paid jobs, diversifying our economy. By the way, I have some news I have to discuss with you afterwards, Bob. I met with the Secretary of DEO about an issue. And I agree with you, Geraldo, that we need to talk about the diversification and pushing for high-paid jobs. Have we done that earlier in one of our earlier goals, goal 1 or 2?
No.
No? Okay. And by the way, that's one of the reasons I was such a strong proponent of the Levan Center, because when we see number 3, invest in small business training, incubators and support, I think that's almost the definition of the Levan Center. So I think we should comment, add a number 5, or unless we've already added 5 and we're on, yeah, we've already added 5 international. So I guess number 6, 7, 8, or 9, just talk about diversification and concentration on high paying jobs. Would that meet with what you're looking at, Geraldo?
Yes, I mean, or we can just leave it under 3 as a subcategory of it instead of adding a 6.
Okay, well then to add 2, 3, including, creation of high paying jobs. Okay, is there any discussion? We really need to be moving.
Mr. Finney had a comment.
Yes, Mr. Finney. Can we see the chat, please?
No, my comment was really back to, I think it was President Hale's question around incentives. And I think it's been covered, so I'll move on.
Okay, we really are running good. If any of you have ever been to one of my meetings, we end our meetings on time. This meeting is scheduled to end at noon. By 12:01, the gavel will come down. So, so we need to be running. So is anybody object to amending number 3 to add creation of high paid jobs and diversification? I see a thumbs up. Any objection? If not, show that done with that objection. Move on to CEDS goal number 4, please.
So this one focuses on, it's very generic. It will be included obviously in the CEDS. And to be honest, personally, I'm a little worried about, not worried, but like how to tie it in with pandemic wise or the CARES Act program?
I'm not sure candidly it is, but that I understand that at our next meeting, we will be dealing with programs that are not specifically CARES Act related. So maybe this should wait till then.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen
Yes.
Abrams?
Yes.
The mobility portion of this is certainly tied into CARES. As you know, transit received substantial pandemic relief funds. So I guess my question here is, why it's only linked to affordable housing, mobility that is, as opposed to even any of the other categories. So as you know, transit and mobility is essential for workforce development so that workers have the ability to get to jobs. It's essential for business attraction so that companies have the ability to know that their workforce can get to their jobs. So the transit, the mobility portion is definitely something that has been the focus of CARES relief.
Well, perhaps we should, and I believe that the affordable housing crisis is one of the biggest problems we're having in South Florida. But I mean, to the extent that it is related to CARES, I think we're largely coming out of that now. And perhaps we should just make this on mobility and move the affordable housing to what Mark will be bringing up at our next meeting and discuss the mobility now, because, by the way, Steve, I had spent roughly 2 years passing a transit-oriented development program through the Broward County Commission, which we did adopt several months ago. So if you're not familiar with that, call me and I'll go over that with you. Yes. Isabel.
When I'm thinking about affordable housing, the only part that I saw that was really directly related to pandemic response was the crisis of people being able to pay their rents. There was a whole foreclosure issues, people being thrown out. So I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just saying, maybe that's part of what we should discuss in a future pandemic. What would we do in order to keep people housed?
I think that might actually go under CEDS goal number 1 today. Can you go back quickly to goal number 1?
I focus on, yeah.
Yeah, face of natural disasters, economies. I think that perhaps train government staff to information of plans, contingency actions before, and perhaps in this one, we should include, including, I mean, if there's a hurricane, we're going to have a housing crisis. If there's going to be a pandemic, we're going to have a housing crisis. Pretty much anything that will be a true disaster is going to cause a housing crisis. So what do we want to add number 5 to this? Or is it not necessary that we would assume communication strategy, open communication, information? There's nothing there that really talks about housing.
No.
We have 12 minutes left before we adjourn. So how do we want to deal with this?
We want to reformat board to address affordable housing as it relates to a pandemic situation. In here.
Yes.
I would leave mobility and access as number 4 and just capture the affordable housing issues and the need to understand that in a pandemic or emergency situation, the housing issues become more acute even than they already are in a normal place. And maybe that requires an additional strategy to deal with. Where we address it, I'm not so much concerned with.
Okay. We're running out of time. So what I will ask for is a proposal to authorize staff to add an item. I think it's because increased funding for affordable housing development, that is not clearly in my opinion, that is not a CARES Act issue. So I would ask that be stricken, that we talk that, and we're going to have to do this conceptually, that number 4, we would talk with 2 goals, affordable housing and mobility and access. And that we would talk about that the importance of mobility, and we can consult with Mayor Abrams or Director Abrams or President Abrams or whatever is Director Abrams.
You can call me Steven.
I'm sorry?
You can just call me your first name, Steven.
Yeah, okay, or consult with Steve on wording on transit, and that we also put a item in there talking about the need to prepare in advance so that when there is a disaster, whether it's a pandemic, hurricane, natural disaster, we need plans in place ahead of time to deal with the inevitable housing crisis. Does that sound like that works conceptually? All right, is there a motion?
So
All
moved.
right, good, I was about picking people. Who moved it?
Mr. Abrams.
Okay, moved by Mayor Abrams, seconded by Chair Smith. And Smith actually did raise his voice. I didn't call on him this time. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Show that adopted. And Geraldo, you may have had more in your slides, but we're out of time.
No, I didn't. It was it.
Okay, very good.
This was
Is there
perfect.
now a
Thank you
motion?
so much.
Is there now a motion? We've approved the 4 individually. Is there a motion to approve them collectively?
So moved.
Nelson Fernandez has moved to make these the CARES Act portion of the strategic plan, seconded by Steve Abrams. Discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show them adopted unanimously. Okay. We have 7 minutes left. I need 3. Mark, you've got about 4 minutes to combine your 2 items.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. Essentially, the CEDS document itself will have a SWOT analysis, a few pages, just essentially summarizing the input that you gave in the survey. And so I'll take the moment right now for, if you have not responded to the survey, we are going to follow up one last time.
We will track you down.
We'll track you down. And then also at this moment, I think that before we move forward, let's establish the rest of the work groups that have not been selected.
Okay.
So
What do you mean by that?
the members that have not.
Oh, the
responded to
members that
survey.
have not, right.
So I have a list of people who have not responded yet to the survey, and I will call you out personally right now and essentially give you the opportunity to select your work group focus area right now.
Because we only have 7 minutes left, I think you should call them instead.
Call them on the phone?
Yeah.
We can do that. Okay. So you all know the strengths, weaknesses, you all responded to the survey. I'm not going to go through, explaining the summary of it, but, we'll collect all that information. Geraldo, just click through the slides so you can get an idea of what they saw. We'll make the connections between these. But essentially what we're seeing, is that everybody has issues depending on your focus area or your specialty. You have your focus of what you see the region needs to focus on, but it kind of all ends up getting tied together through lack of government communication. You can just click through them.
I love the word clouds because I think that they're very effective ways of showing.
So everybody gave, great, more extended responses. We kind of went through it, categorized them according to like this so that we can get multiple responses.
Before you move on, are you referring to our leadership in politics as a natural disaster?
I'd say that's man-made.
Yeah.
It was second after natural disasters, yes.
But right, so just go to the three-legged stool slide.
This one?
No.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Go to the previous?
The next slide.
Next slide.
These are some of the commonly repeated themes, but basically the point is
Wrong
that
way.
I'll summarize this in a document and it's our foundation.
Next slide. Next slide.
The other way.
That one. Three-legged stool.
Everyone has their focus area, but everybody also says that leadership seems to be a big disconnect here. That's enough of that. And then basically the next step is that we have our goals and objectives for the CARES Act approved. In the next meeting, we will take some of your strategic plans and some of your, documents that you have for what you plan to fund in the future. So we'll be reaching out to you for a little bit of homework on your part, asking for, what are you looking to do? What, if you had money, what would you fund? We can take that and funnel it right into the goals and objectives so that it's all done for us. And all we have to do is, align it and approve it. So we'll do that in the next work group meeting for CARES Act specifically, and then we'll do this again for the more broad sense.
Our next big strategy meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 6th.
Yes.
Okay, we were hoping to have one meeting in either January or February for each of the committees. I expect we'll have one in January and then at a time to be determined, and that if we're able to get that done in January, we won't need to meet in February, but if we all talk as long as I think we will, we may need a February meeting. The good news is I probably won't be there, so the meeting probably can end much more quickly. But we will have these meetings of the actual working groups. And again, I want to be clear, I don't want to be hearing we need affordable housing. We need specific plans as to how we're going to be addressing the issues that each of you have signed up for. Got about 3 minutes left. Do you want to go over the rest of the calendar?
Sure. Well, basically, after the second CEDS committee meeting, or the next one, when we do the same process, but for the broader CEDS committee and all of the work group focus areas, we'll establish a formal vision statement. Each CEDS has a vision statement. We'll come together, synthesize. Staff will propose something that brings everything together and move that to approve. And then in the next work group meeting following the March, we'll basically do the same process of establishing the priority projects and then moving forward. The CARES Act project is scheduled to complete in June. So we will approve our final document and in June, and then do the same for the more broad sets. So essentially we're doing the same process twice, once for CARES and once for sets.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left. Are there any questions or comments before we adjourn?
If I quickly follow direction of our president, Jack Stoddard, and myself, President Hale and President Boomer, praise serve on the Orange Bowl Committee. I know people just see it as a game, but we're hosting 65,000 people coming in. And we just announced yesterday we will have the University of Georgia and University of Michigan. So substantial economic driver in this community. Wow. And to Bob and to Mike Finney, I don't know if we're kind of share and boast that to companies who are coming in, because those kinds of events are attractive to corporations to come in. And so I hope you all will join us. It's the December 31st game at 7:30, so you can make it your New Year's Eve party as well. And so we hope you will join us.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments before we adjourn? Are there any additional questions or comments before we adjourn? Last call. If not, it is 11:59. My meeting's end on time. Show us adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yep.